You are shitting me. I have literally just what a twat. Just dropped the camera on the fuselage. Well, welcome back to episode 3 of the Cadet from Igabo Models. I'm currently now just repaired the fuselage, which I will speak about at the end of the video. So hopefully you've got a pile of balsa, such as what look like wings, 2 wings, horizontal stabilizer, we've got a rudder, we've also got a skid, and in the last episode we talked about doing these. Now you can see I've actually finished these off, and I've just given them the very slightest little bit of rounding off. Now I've finished these off using this very small electric orbital sander. Now the next thing we want to do is that in the instructions it's all joined together and sanded before we do the covering. So let me just talk about what we're going to do. I'm going to sand the wings and give you some advice. Then we're going to add these because, and we're back in the room because the battery went. So first plan of attack, we are going to sand everything. So I'm just going to talk you through a few things that I do to try and minimize any potential danger. So let's have a go at sanding the wings. Right, first thing, this sloping wingtip, I went in 25mm, and then all I did was I got my blade and I gently cut it down to the surface. So at the moment that is just roughly cut angle, and what we're now going to do is we're just going to gently sand this with a block. So I've got an old wooden block here, and we are going to be doing the leading edge first. Now there are no actual shapes or guides on the plans for the leading edge, but we're going to have to make this leading edge rounded, and there's a number of ways we can do that. We can do it very, very slowly with sandpaper, like so, and then walk up and down like that. Now let me just show you something. Before you start doing any of your sanding, what you want to try and do is just get the bit you're working on just hanging over the edge of this bench or this block I've got here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay my hand on it like that to support it, and sometimes I'll even get like a ruler just on the top, because what we're trying to do is I'm just then like so, that's just then spreading some load across to support this. If at any stage you go, see here, look, it's a little bit loose there, it's firm. So if I keep my hand there, now the whole thing is supported. I'm now going to go up. This is my David's plane. These are, I think, readily available. Like I've always said, always put it on its back when you put it down, or put it on its side. So I'm going to start at the very end. Be very careful, because what we don't want to do is get too far down and end up taking the sides of these ribs off. So it's actually better to finish short. So I'm about, what is that, about 45 degrees. Don't stop, just go in one direction. And the other thing is go in one direction. If you come back that way, the next thing is you've cut yourself a grain. What you're going to do is it would stutter and get it would damage. So again, same angle, I'm cutting across there, same angle, keeping the same applied pressure. Make sure you regularly clear the swarf that comes out of the plane. Let's have a little look. I think I'm going to be dead risky. See, it's got a bit thicker now, but we're keeping the pressure up, keeping it moving, keeping the pressure up, keeping it moving. There you go. Now I could possibly get away with one more, but what I'm going to do is just going to stop and have a look. make sure that if we look down there, it's not too wavy. What I am going to do is I am just going to pop that back on there, and I think that I can get away with it just a small amount there, like so. Just taking that, so I'm actually cutting just the edge on the top there, like so. Lovely. Look at that. Now, I'm very happy with that. The rest of it I'm going to sand, so I'm going to leave that. And can you see where actually I have just stopped the plane? It's about 5mm short of the ribs. So I've got this little flat section there. We didn't want to come anywhere further closer to that, because that will end up taking the ends of these ribs off. So what I'm going to do now I'm not going fully the same curve. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a couple of sweeps at that, because I'm going to leave this relatively flat bottom. Now, what we've got to be careful of is obviously we're now working on a curve, and this is going to need a lot more support. So you see how I've got the ruler, I've got it supporting, I've got my finger underneath supporting, and then all I'm going to do is I'm going to come up there, just take one off, two off. Let's have a little look at that. Now, perfect. Now what we're going to do now is I'm now going to finish this with some sandpaper. Right, this is about 240 grit. I've got this on a wooden block, and then all I'm going to do, again supporting the glider, again being very careful. Notice how when I'm using the sandpaper, I'm actually working away from the ribs. Now the other thing we have to do is that you'll notice now what I'm going to do is I didn't bother doing that with the plane, but what I'm doing now is I'm just working away at this tip here. So I'm working away at the tip there. There you go, and I'm just curving it in that plane and in that plane, and it's worth just taking your time. You do get the desire to rush it, but if you can, there you go. Lovely. You can, oh, look at that. Right, so we're going to do exactly the same on the under surface. Again, just supporting the structure. Right, now that's the leading edge done, and what I will do is I'm just going to finish that with some 800, and this is emery paper, because I just think that gives it a very nice smooth finish. Now the golden rule with this is to remember, whatever you do on this side, this is now going to be your template for doing the other side. So we've done the leading edge. What we're going to do now is we're just going to round this off and then round this edge off, and obviously fatter here, thinner here. So my advice is stop this here, and now we're going to do the trailing edge, because if we've got the contour of the trailing edge and the contour of the leading edge, trailing edge, this will give us the end shape for this tip. So same thing again. I'm just going to get this in place. Now it says in the instruction from the trailing edge, to taper this down to 0.5 millimeters. What we're going to really need to be careful here is that when we're doing this, that we don't end up taking out these this end rib. So I've got that supported again, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to leave my ruler here, because this is actually works as a bit of a guard for when we're, so same thing, it's flatter angle. And remember, for this one, we're only taking it from the top, not from the bottom. Now, you'll notice how that's getting thicker. Right, there you go. Now, let me just have a little look at this, because this is going to get scary. Right, so I'm just going to slowly work my way down here. See how that, now any resistance, like I've got a little bit of resistance here, I've just stopped and pulled away, and have a look, I've got a little bit of actually just a hard little bit of wood there. Right, now then. Right. I can't emphasize enough, keep this clean when you're actually right. Now, as they always say, measure twice, cut once. Alright, now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a bit more off the edge. Ooh, there you go, like so. Let's check. Oh, lovely, there you go. Right, now you can look down the end there, and you can see that this end is slightly fatter than this end. Let me show you. So that bit there is quite fat. This bit here is what I'm hoping to achieve. So it means I've just got to work on this little bit. Just a bit more. I've got to be careful, because we've got to, there you go. It's quite hard balsa just there. Let's have a little look at that. I think that'll do it, you know. Yeah, there you go. So I'm quite happy with that now. Now, so I am just going to now very carefully with my sandpaper just slowly work down here, being careful not to hit, take out this end rib, because that would be very easy to do there. But you notice how the whole time I'm doing this, I'm bracing this structure. Right, now then. Okay, that's lovely. Now I'm just going to turn that over. I'm not using the plane on this, but what I am going to do is I am just going to run up there and just virtually give that a lick. Right, so the only thing we have to do now is to sort out this. So what we want, this is the wingtip. What we want is, you can see, it's fairly fat from the leading edge here, so we're going to round that off there and then taper more as we go to the back. We're going to have to be slightly careful, and I'm not sure how much planing I'm going to use, because we've got quite a big joint here with a lot of glue, and that's more likely to snag with the plane. What I will do is, I'm not going mad by that. That's more than enough. And I think what I'm going to do is I've got some 120 grit here, and I might just actually finish this by hand. Now, really pleased with that. And then what we're going to do is I'm then just going to round that edge off very gently, like so. But you see how even when I'm doing this little bit here, I'm supporting the structure with my hand. Right, now the undersurface of the wing is remaining flat, although I do have, so what I am going to do is I'm not tapering that. All I'm doing is I'm just rounding the edge off like so. And then I get my 800 like so. Which makes it look very sexy. And then we're just going to, with this square edge I've got here, I'm just going to go down here like this. Now you can, if you run across here and you just feel one of the ribs might just, like that one there, is just a smidge, just taken out. I think it's actually a little bit of glue, but now that just feels just a little bit rough there. So let's get that nice and smooth. Right, I am very happy with this. So the thing to do, we're going to do exactly the same on the other wing, and what you want to try and do if you can is to just put the two wings up next to each other and compare the wing section and the trailing edge section, so that ideally what you want is them being identical. Right, next thing we've got to do is the stabiliser. First thing I would say is make sure you mark them left and right, up and down. I know that sounds a bit mad, but it'll be very easy for you to pick one up and think that you've got it in the right orientation, and you've ended up making the wing sections. So just make sure that when you're actually sanding these, that you're actually sanding it in the right directions and how you want it. Now, don't go mad with this. So again, this is, I'm just going to hand sand the leading edge. So literally just going to get that over the end. Again, support the whole thing. You can use a ruler. And then I am just going to go. Now again, no mention of what sections you need here. So with this one, I'm just going to round off the same as the top and the bottom. Wing section, there is no wing section mark for these. I'm going to do the same thing, so I'm going to obviously curve the top, not so mad at the bottom, and then gently round the edges off. Don't go too mad thinning this, because this is quite a fragile structure. And it also says again down to 0.5 mil, but just be very careful when you're going down with that. But remember, only do the top surface of the tapering, not the bottom surface, for safety's sake. Actually, the steel ruler works really well here, so I just got this. And again, I'm using a very lightweight sandpaper, because I just want to take my time with this. Slightly higher grit on this one, and I've just gone down at an angle, and that has given me quite a nice taper. There you go. So I have now I've put this face mask on, as you should really do at the start. I've got to be honest with you, I didn't wear the face mask at the start because I was worried that the audio wouldn't be that good, so I took one for the team. But I'm just literally just rounding this all off. Let me show you something. The rudder and the fin was exactly the same. Now, little tip here, I'm preempting what could potentially be some grief. So what I've done here is this little tag that drops down inside the fuselage, this bit here, you can see I've tapered that slightly. The reason being is that's going to need to engage with the tailplane, because that's going to drop down inside the fuselage. That's going to go down in there like so. And then you've got this one, which is the skid. Now what I've done for the skid, I've done the same thing. I've just rounded the edges. I actually laid the skid in it as it should sit, just to make sure that at the trailing edge I get the same thickness. But I've actually tapered both of these, because the idea is that that's going to drop into there like so. And in fact that's still quite stiff to go in. That's going to go in there like so. And then the rudder drops in there like that. And the idea is that the tailplane has got to actually engage through it. So I'm just envisaging that could be a bit of fun. Hang on a minute, I've gone completely mad there. Right, here we go, let me just show you. Right, so can you see, as I push that up there, look, this is where the slots for the tailplane are going to go. So what I've done is I've just made these, I've tapered this so it's slightly easy, and the same with the rudder. So that's going to pop in there like so, and that's what you've got. That's what we're going to do now, is just make sure that these are going to fit in place before we start the covering, because if we do this, see, that's going to need the tiniest little bit. Oh, it will go, but I'm just going to, now there you go, that's what it should look like. And then the idea is these bad boys slot between it. So what I'm going to do is plenty of dry fitting before we get on to covering. So I took my time putting this all together, and I think the idea is that the tail surface is supposed to make it portable. I did just very gently open the slots out on the rudder, sorry, on the fin and the skid, just a little bit, but they're still quite stiff. So now I'm happy with that. I'm now going to take these off and then cover them, and then I am going to take the fin off, cover that, and I think that's going to stay on, and then that's going to get covered with a new material. So next thing we've got to do before we do the covering, the very, very final thing to do, is let's get these wings joined together. Right, okay, the very last thing is the joining of the wings before we finally get round to doing the covering. And so I clean mine up, my wing joiners, and here's the thought process. I am going to add these to one side like so, and they're nice and flat. I'm just going to offer these up now to make sure that we got the angles right. There is actually no measurements. There's no actual angle. The idea is you just get that so that one's laying flat and that's at the right angle. Okay, so we've sanded all our bits and pieces and we're now ready for the covering. Oh, hang on, let me switch the snooker off. Okay, so we've had our mass sanding, and now we're ready to cover. Now, I have been umming and ahhing about this until a new product came along, so it's changed my mind. I was going to do this in feather cover, but somebody very kindly reminded me that I've done a full instructional video on feather cover anyway, which I will point to. I'll put it either here or wherever YouTube decides it to go. Now, I'm going to do mine in tissue and a new product, which I am going to do a separate video on, exploring the potential of the product, from Angel Wing Design. So let me show you. But oh, by the way, the damage. Remember, I like a twat went and dropped the camera on it. All I've done is I rubbed a load of alphatic resin in it, got a blade, and then just lifted it all up, let that dry. Then I'll literally massage some more alphatic in, and rock hard. And there's no structural damage. So, first thing is I'm going to coat this in Easy Coat.